Give me 1 second. You switch over to the other one. I think we're going to be live now. Set that up a little bit there. Okay. Well, welcome everybody. Sorry about last week. You know, it was a little bit of a hectic weekend last weekend, and I didn't get a chance to do my show, as you know. Unfortunately, last week, if you recall, I said to you, oh, it was a miserable night. It was raining. It was not really a good night because of the, getting all soaking wet and walking my dogs and all that kind of stuff. Well, anybody who's in Jersey, I think, Nat, I think you're in Jersey, if I'm not mistaken, you know it's raining like crazy here. So, unfortunately, it's another wet night with the dogs. Even my dogs didn't want to walk tonight. That's how lousy it is out there. Couple of things we want to talk about. I don't know if you saw, but I just posted a couple of pictures. I remember I told you last week. Let's bring you back over here again. 1 second here. Okay. Remember I told you last week or the week before that I was going to actually try to get some pictures of when I first started out back in the day, which was like probably 42 years ago, something like that. I did put a picture up of, I think that was the first year I opened up my gas station. It was I think it was in 77, if I'm not mistaken, is when I opened that up. But that's the first year that I was open and actually up and running for business. Lon, good to see you there. Hope you're doing well. I was just telling everybody I posted a bunch of pictures of the restoration of the 67 Mustang that I was doing. It was the Fastback. Now we will talk about that in just a minute, but I just want to point something else out about that as well. The 72 that I had posted up there, the 72 Torino. That Torino was actually not my Gran Torino. I had another Gran Torino. That was a brown car. I bought that Torino because I crashed my 73 Gran Torino, which was just like that movie, the Clint Eastwood movie Gran Torino. It looked just like that. It was the metallic green with the tan interior, except his, I think he had the bigger engine, and mine was the 351 Cleveland motor that I had in mine. But that 72, I bought that because, and I will tell the story again for anybody who didn't hear it the last time. I decided after I restored my Mustang and had it for a while, I was driving, and I decided I was going to sell the Mustang, and I was just going to drive the Torino. Well, I sold the Mustang, I sold it, and the guy picked the car up that day at work. On the way home that night, I actually crashed my Gran Torino and destroyed the whole front of the Gran Torino. So in one day, I lost my Gran Torino, and I also lost my 67 Mustang. So that was, and that's when I went out and I bought that 72 just to drive that car around while I was working on my 73 to put everything back on because it was nosed out. I had to change the hood, the fenders, of course, the front support. Back then they used to have these. They used to call them 5-mile-an-hour bumpers. So back then you had a bumper that was actually mounted on the shock absorber, so it would actually push in and pop back out. So I had to change the hood, the grill, of course. I had to change the front bumper, the two front fenders, and then repaint and do the rest of the body work on the car. The rest of the body work was actually just to cover up a lot of the rust, because back in those days, cars used to rust quite a bit. Especially around the wheel well and in front of the rear wheels. They used to rot out there all the time. So I figured while I was painting the nose of the car, I would do the body work over and do everything else over. So that's why you see the 72 Mustang, 72 Gran Torino, that tan color or brown colored car that I was working on. So I drove that for a little while until my Gran Torino was done, and then I was able to drive the Gran Torino. So one thing I want to talk about before we come over here and take a look at the chat going on over here. I see Joe's in there from Joe's Auto Electric. How you doing, Joe? I just talked to you the other yesterday, I think it was actually. So I hope all is doing well. Anybody who hasn't checked out Joe's channel, check him out. Joe's Auto Electric, good friend of mine. I know him for just about forever. So I just want to mention one thing to one of my subscribers, Top Fuel. Top Fuel, I sent you an email the other day. You sent me an email after one of my live streams, and you mentioned that you that you needed a scan tool, and I sent you. I don't know if you got my email, but I actually wasn't sure if you needed the one that was the Wi-Fi or if you needed the one that was Bluetooth. So instead of sending one and not the other, I decided I just send both of them to you. So now you have two of them. So if you can use them, fine. Hopefully one or the other will work for you. But if you're here tonight, Top Fuel, let me know you're in there. And, I mailed it out yesterday. So you probably are going to have it within, I'm going to say probably by Tuesday. You should have it. I think you're in New York, if I'm not mistaken. So you should have it Tuesday because, the mail shouldn't take that long. All right. So that I wanted to just mention that to Top Fuel, William. All right. Let's see what we got going on here. Oh, I see my buddy Wyatt's in here. Good to see you, Wyatt. Let's go back up here. Let's see what we got going on. Let's start up in the front. Gerald, you were first tonight. Gerald from No Rust, Texas. He's here. I see Nat's in here. Good evening, Bobby T. How you doing? Hayward's here. You like those shackles on that thing? Yeah, that was how you raised this. Well, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. Obviously, you've been around the block a few times, such as myself. But that's how you did them years ago. You wanted to raise them up a little bit. They had shackles with like I think they had three different settings on them, three different adjustments. So if you wanted it up really high, you just pull the pin out of the spring, pulled it down, and you can get the suspension up a little bit higher. But I leave it to Hayward to see something like that on there. That was pretty observant. But that's how they did it years ago. Well, you know what? Hayward's probably going to remember this one then too. Remember when they had they came out with that brilliant idea of when you wanted to raise your suspension and the springs, instead of changing the springs in the back, they used to sell you these pieces. They were made of rubber or they were made of metal, and you used to just lift the car up on the lift, extend the spring a little bit, put the rubber pieces in there and lower it back down, and it would temporarily raise the back of the car up. Or you had the other one that was made of metal, and you would actually put it in there, and you had a bolt in the middle, and you would turn it, and it would actually jack the spring a little bit. It worked real good, but they used to cause failures at the springs all the time, too. All right. Chris, hi, good to see you. Joe, like I said, good to see you, too. I hope everything is going well. I know you had pretty hectic week at work. We talked about that for a little bit. How much would that cost today? Not really sure. Lon, you maybe can elaborate on that one for me. I'm not sure what that was. Ray, good to see you. What else we have in here? Got a bunch of guys in here, but let's see what kind of questions we have. We have Wyatt in here. It's good to see you, Wyatt. Haven't talked to you in a while. I hope all is well. MG63, good to see you in there. Love the pictures of the Mustang, the Exxon station on Kennedy Boulevard. But I got one thing that I actually, let me just go through here first. I'm going to see if anybody else said anything about that. Videos. Wyatt, you met my friend Joe, I guess. Okay, Keith, okay. Do you know Keith liked the transducer, Joe? Oh, okay. Yeah, we talked about that the other day. Joe Ham Radio from Connecticut, Lon, okay. All right, I'm going to talk about this because nobody said anything about this yet. So we're going to talk about this now. MG63, I used the S-shocks to raise the rear of my car. 67 Camaro. That was a nice car. I bet you wish you had that car. That's true. Back then, we used to do that. We used to put the S-shocks in the back, and you would underneath the license plate or underneath the bumper or whatever, you'd actually just get in the back, fill it up with air, and you would raise the suspension up. But you probably remember how hard that thing was when you drove over the bumps. When you went over a bump, it felt like your fillings in your teeth were rattling because they were so it was so stiff. And I'm going to talk about one thing here because nobody said anything about it. And I'm going to bring it up because nobody said anything. Big Dog 50001. Good to see you in there. Hope everything is well with you. Love the old cars. You want to do the video on some cars? Joe says he did a video on some of the cars. We all had as well. They Gabriel hijackers. That's right. They were the Gabriels. They were. That was like the top of the line stuff back then. All right, but now I'm going to talk about that video. I'm going to go back to the video, the one I posted now, just a little while ago, and I'm going to start right in the beginning of it, and then we're going to talk about that. I'm going to tell you at what point we are right now. Right at point 0.06. I look at this picture here, and I still remember the cars that I had in the shop. That was 40 whatever years ago, but I still remember those cars, in the shop that I was working on. One of them, I think, was either a Maverick or I think it was a Maverick. Pretty sure it was a Maverick in the right side bay. There was a Maverick in there, and I remember the person that owned that car as well. But that's when I first started. And you see that shirt, you can't tell by the picture of the shirt there, but that shirt, actually, this was the Exxon colors that you had to wear back in those days. You had to wear a certain color pants, a certain color shirt. That shirt was a very, very light gray with darker gray pinstriping in there. Take a look at the sleeves, how dirty the sleeves were. Once you got that grease in the sleeves, you could never get it out. But that's it. And back then, look at the hair I had back then. That was back in my motorcycle days too. So that's a long time ago. All right, I'm going to just keep on going here, and we're going to talk about that. When they show the picture at the point 10, I bought the car just as you see it right there, with the shackles in the back and the red rims on it and the colored fenders. The front hood had holes in the top of the hood. The wiring was hanging underneath the bottom of it. I paid $300 for that car. Customer came into my shop. He was getting gas. I saw the car out there. I went out and said to the guy, "Hey, if you ever want to sell it, let me know. I'd be happy to buy it from you." And he says, "Well, if you want to buy it," he says, "I'll sell it to you right now." And I wound up buying it for $300. But those cars today, by the back lights in the back of the car, they used to rot out back there all the time. But this one here was actually fairly clean, even underneath the bottom where the springs connected onto the frame. They used to rot out in the front of the tires. They used to rot out where the front part of the spring would go through the frame itself. That would rot out, and you'd wind up having you have to change that whole part of the frame inside there, which was kind of expensive. Just recently, I had a person come into me with I think it was a 65 Mustang they wanted to sell to me, and I went and looked at it. And you see in the back where the shackle is located back there, it didn't have the shackles on it. It was just a regular standard suspension in the back. What happened is the shackle, where it going through the frame, the frame was so rotted away, it actually snapped and wound up going up through the trunk, so that part of the spring was up inside the back of the trunk. But I decided I was actually not going to buy that vehicle because there was too much wrong with it. I didn't want to go into if it was that rotted out there, I was afraid what I would find underneath there. But the hood, you can see in the front of the hood at the point 21, 21 seconds into it, the hood was held down with a chain. That's how the hood was closed. And then you'll see at point 30, 30 seconds, that was the car. And I was actually, at that point, I had gone to a body shop, a supply house, and I bought the paint, and it was supposed to be candy apple red. I was supposed to, now anybody who knows about painting knows back in those days, it was lacquer, by the way, I might add. Now, back in those days, we used to have to seal the car with a sealer. You sealed the car, you primed the car, and then you put the color coat over the top of it. So I primed it to seal it. I color coded it with the silver as they had given to me, and then I sprayed the candy apple color over the top of that. And then when you go and you see it was at 34 seconds into it, you see it looks pretty decent there. It looks kind of reddish, right? But then you're going to see we're outside. You see when it was outside at 45 seconds, you see the car off in the distance there. The color was just like, it was not a color that I was actually going to drive. So what I did is I went and I actually bought paint, and I decided I wasn't going to do a candy apple color, because as I found out later on, you're not supposed to paint it a gold primer, or the base coat is not supposed to be gold. It was supposed to be silver. They had given me the wrong color, and that's why it came out like that purplish type color. So, but at that point, I decided, that's it. I'm done with that the candy apple, and I decided to paint it that blue. And you'll see the blue that I painted. It was actually a Corvette blue that I painted it back then, and that's pretty much before I put the wheels on it. Because back in the day, and Hayward, you're going to remember this too. Um, the cars back then, there was no such thing as half these rims that you have out there today. Back then, it was Craigers, and you had Craigers, and if you had Craigers on your car, that was the top of the line for everything, and that's what I had gotten on there. I had the Craigers on there, which, as you know, in the winter you couldn't use them because that salt on the road would just eat them up, and they would just pit. All right, what do we got in here now? Let's see what we got. Joe, hi, how you doing? I hope everything is well in Kearney. I'm going to go back a little bit, see what we got here. The Gabriel Hijackers. Got air shocks on my 70 El Camino. The El Camino is a beautiful vehicle. I was actually thinking about picking up, not an El Camino. I was actually thinking about picking up the Ford version of it, the Ranchero. I was thinking about getting one of those and redoing that, but that kind of didn't last too long in my head. I just don't have the time to do it. But that would be nice. Yep. MG63, air shocks rode like a buckboard wagon. That's the truth. That's true. All right. MG63 says that's Jim's younger brother. Now, believe it or not, that was me back in the day. You know, I had long hair when I first started in the business. My hair was down longer than it is in that picture, because in that picture I actually cut it to open up my shop. I cut my hair shorter, but it used to be all the way down to my shoulders, practically below my shoulders back then. Now I got practically no hair at all, but that's just the way it is. All right, I got a couple things we're going to talk about, and I did have a couple things we were going to talk about last week, but I never got a chance to go over them because, as you know, I cut last week's shop talk or Sunday night shop talk short. Let's see a couple other things in here, and then we're going to talk about this. Still love the Craigers, says Joe. That's right. I love the old stuff versus the newer stuff. I think I probably told you this. One of my friends actually has he has 3 old cars. One of them being the one with the rumble seat that pulls down to the back of it in absolutely pristine condition. Underneath it is immaculate. The underneath part of his car is cleaner than the top of my car. You know, so you get some nice, really clean cars out there. All right, let's see. We got 67. Okay. All right. Let me just. I know. Oh, somebody had asked me about back in the day when I was in the gas station and it was a gas shortage. What do we actually have to do back in those days? Now, there was 2 gas shortages. As anybody who's my age or older remembers these days, there was 2 gas shortages. The one gas shortage, I did not own a gas station at that point. I worked for somebody, so I didn't really have too much to do with it. You know, I just did my job while I worked for him. But I did own a gas station during the second gas shortage, and the problem I ran into is during the second one is that there was it was created or whatever the case may be, we couldn't get the product. And what they did is the company, mine was an Exxon station, but all companies said that what they would do is they would give you a certain percentage of the product that you sold the year before, and that's how much you would get. Like if you sold, for argument's sake, you sold 100,000 gallons. Now, nobody sells that little. Everybody sells a lot more. But if you sold 100,000 gallons, what they would do is they said that we're going to give you 70% of the 100,000 gallons, which comes out to, instead of 70, and instead of 100,000, you're going to get 70,000 for the entire year divided by how many months. So 70,000 divided by the 12, and that's how many gallons of gas they would give you, which was a real pain in the rear end. But it created lines like you wouldn't believe. A lot of you guys know where my shop was in Bayonne, the gas station I had. It used to go from my place on 53rd and Kennedy, used to go all the way down, heading downtown in Bayonne. It went down past the park and looped around. Bayonne is like an S on Kennedy Boulevard it's like an S style road as you're coming down, but the boulevard it turns to the left and then turns back to the right. My line used to go all the way down past the park, all the way down to like probably into like the 20s or the 30s. So the line would be as far as you could possibly see. Then I don't know who come up with the brilliant idea, but what they said is that they said that nobody could get gas unless they had, if it was an odd day, you could get gas if you had an odd numbered license plate, the last digit in your license plate, the first digit, I don't recall, but you had to have either an odd number or an even number, and then you could get gas. And then to further complicate the problem, they told the gas attendants or the owners of the gas stations that it was up to me to check to make sure that anybody on the line had to have a half a tank of fuel or less. Otherwise, I had to throw them off the line and I couldn't serve them. That was either Exxon or whoever's brilliant idea that was, but that's what they made us do. Did I do it? No. The way I figured, if somebody sat on my line and they waited for, a couple of miles to get into my gas station to get gas, I wasn't going to throw them off the line. I gave them whatever they wanted to, which is back to another problem we had. They used to, the oil companies would say that you would be getting whatever, 20 or 30,000 gallons for that month, which meant you had to be open every day and pump gas. You couldn't just, and I could have pumped out in one day. I could have pumped out all the product they gave me for the month and been empty and sold to the quota and made more money. But what happened is the oil companies came in and said to us that we had to make that product last until the end of the month. That if we ran out of product for more than 3 consecutive days, that they would come in and padlock the door and throw us out. So all we were allowed to do is to pump gas for a couple of hours a day and then ration how much you could get. I didn't ration gas. What I did is I just shortened the time that I was open. My theory is if somebody's going to sit on my line and sit out there for 2, 3, 4 hours trying to get gas, I didn't want to tell them that there was a $5 limit or a $3 limit or whatever it was back then. So anybody who sat on my line, they always got the tank filled up. But instead of being open for a regular 16-hour day, as I always was, I would actually be open for only for an hour, maybe 2 hours at a time, and then sell out the product, and then I would just wind up shutting down the gas part of it. So that was always a pain in the rear end. And I remember one day coming into work, and I got there at 6 o'clock in the morning, like I always do, and we had no gas, and the signs were on the pumps that we were out of gas. We had no product, and we would be closed. The gas would not be pumping that day. And when I got to work, somebody had parked their car on the pumps at night and left it there. And of course, the first person knew that there was no gas, but everybody else in that line all the way down the boulevard had no idea that we had no gas to even pump. Luckily, when I opened up the place, my gas truck had showed up and I was able to gas everybody up because somebody parked on my island and left their vehicle there. Everybody else just lined up behind them. And then when they lined up overnight, they had no idea that I didn't have any gas. I'll tell you this one time too, right? There was a lot of problems back then. When I had the gas station, people were very upset, and they were upset at the retailer, which was me and anybody else who owned the gas station. But believe me when I tell you, it wasn't us that was creating the problems. It was the oil company who was actually creating the problem and driving the price up. We just had to be the face piece to actually talk to the customer and try to explain it. I remember one time somebody driving past my place and throwing a Molotov cocktail at the gas pumps because they were so angry at, not being able to get gas. But it was not my fault or anybody else's fault. It was actually because the oil companies had cut us back on the supply that we couldn't get. I will tell you this too. One time we had we're not going to talk about this because this can get into a little bit of a discussion. But I will say this: the problem I ran into was that I had to put at every intersection, I had to put a guy on every intersection to direct traffic so that there would not be a car blocking an intersection. So I'm not going to elaborate on that. But I remember telling a certain person that came into my place, and they said to me that it was my responsibility to put a man on every one of those intersections in direct traffic. And at that point, I just said that if I have to put a man on every intersection from here to all the way down to a couple of miles down, I said, you know what, I'm just going to close the place down right now because I can't afford to do it. So I said, get on your motorcycle and drive down the line and tell everybody that I'm closed. And at that point, they said, he got on the motorcycle. He didn't drive down the line. He just actually took off and let it go. But that was one thing. That was back in the gas station days. Thankfully, after 17 years, I was out of the gas station. So I was there for a little over 17 years. I bought the place. I think it was December 1st that I started in 1977, and I was there for 17 and whatever years afterwards. So thankfully, when I got out of there, it was like being released from prison, because that was actually, the oil companies were screwing the daylights out of me. I'm going to tell you this. I remember one time we had a discussion with my salesperson. He came into the place, and they would come in, and back in those days, they used to give you a book, and that book was about that thick, and it had everything that you needed to run the gas station. We used to buy everything from Exxon. Everything back then was the starters, the alternators, the plugs, thermostats, antifreeze, motor oil. Everything that you needed for a car came from the company. And one day my salesperson comes in. This is after years of being in business. He comes in, he says to me, he gives me the new contract, and he says, we're going to raise the rent is going to go up a significant amount of money. And I said to him, Tom, I can't afford to pay that. I said, you know what? Set me up a meeting with the head people. I have to come in and we have to have a discussion about this, because I just can't afford it. Long story short, we're not going to get into a lot of details, but the bottom line is they got me really, really good. And what they said to me is, this is exactly what they said to me. We talked about the price of the rent and how I can't pay it because of X amount of dollars. And I remember the one guy sitting back in his chair and saying to me, well, after all, Mr. Murata, he says, profit's the name of the game. And that was it. I pretty much at that point, my rent had gone up, and it was horrible. My salesman comes in, he gives me the book, he hands me the book. This is a month or 2 months later. Hands me the book, and he says to me, this is your stocking plan for the next 6 months. Fill it out when you have a chance and get it back to me. So I said, sure, no problem. I get the book out, and I go through the book, and he comes back in the following week, and he says to me, did you have a chance to do that? I said, yeah, I did. I said, but I want to ask you a couple of questions here. And I flipped the book up, open, I look at the book. I said, 185, 75, 14 tire. How much? Tells me a price. He said, well, it's right there in the stocking thing. It tells you how much the tire is. I said, what can you do on a price? He says, that price is the price. He says, I can't do anything about that. That's just the price it is. I said, no. I said, I'm not going to order any tires then. I'll pick them up from an outside supplier. So he gets a little bit angry, and he gives me a little bit of attitude. So I take out the book, and I look at the book, and I said to him, well, how much for the motor oil? I said, the motor oil is X amount of dollars per case. What's the best price you can do on it? He says, that is the best price we can do on it. There's nothing we can do. That whatever it says in the book is how much you're going to pay. I said, really? I said, because I can get that exact same product someplace else and cheaper. And now he gets PO'd again. I said, I'm not going to order that. I said, I'll get it from another place. The third thing, I think it was batteries, the third thing. So I says, again, we go through the whole thing about the price on it and everything. And now he's fuming because I'm not buying anything. And his salary is based on what he sells. And his job is his salesman. His job was to make me buy as much product from the company as I possibly could. Well, after everything is all said and done, and we go through the book, and I hand them back the book, and I said, that's everything I'm going to order. I said, because really nothing is got good prices on there. And I said to him, after all, Tom, profits is the name of the game. He was so mad he couldn't even say anything. He was like fumbling all over words. He took the book that he's talking to me, holding the book, and he throws the book at me and walked out the door, and never saw him back on my place again. They gave me a new salesperson. And that's when I decided it was time to get out of the gas station and to do just strictly a repair shop versus doing a gas station, because you're always under the thumb of the major oil companies. The only ones making money is the big oil company. So, but there, I got that off my chest. Is Exxon my favorite company in the whole world? Nope, not at all. But it's not just Exxon. It's Exxon, it's Shell, it's any of the big major oil companies. It's just strictly business. There's no personal connection whatsoever. I had the gas station, I used to get a retailer of the month, a retailer of the year, youngest retailer, because back then I was very young, youngest retailer ever to run a gas station. A whole bunch of different things. They had given me plaques and this, that, and the other thing. And the 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 letters that they used to send to you was not dear Jim, dear Mr. Murata, dear whatever. It was dear number 0048. That's how all their correspondence to me was addressed. And there was never any personal connection whatsoever. And whether it's an oil company or a donut franchise, it's all the same thing. That's why I decided I was not going to do a franchise anymore. I was strictly going to do just my own repair shop, and that was it. There would be no more fees. My gas station back when I left there, well, I started in '77 and I left there 17 years later. So you can do the math. But when I left there, my rent on a 100 by 100 gas station, a 2-bay shop, 2 bays, 2 islands, so I could pump 4 cars and work on 2 cars in the building at the same time, because it was only a 2-bay garage, and then of course a sales office in the front. Back then I was paying over $10,000 a month, and that was back in probably, you'll see, it's 77 plus whatever, it was 10 years into it. So that's how long ago I was paying that kind of, it was crazy money to rent. That's why I decided not to do a franchise and just strictly do it myself, because they wind up killing you. All right, enough talking about my favorite gas company in the whole wide world. What else do we want to talk about? Talked about that already. We talked about that. Somebody wanted to know about how much it is to open up a shop. We talked about that last week, and that's done. Okay, we talked about that. Okay, let's see what we got going on over here. What we have talking about going here now. Just take a look back here. Yeah, look purple. You know, Chris, there was a phrase I used to have for it, and I used to say it was whatever, purple. You know, and I just couldn't drive it. Now, anybody who knows where my gas station was, I was so embarrassed by the color of that car. Before I painted it blue, I put it up in what I used to call death row on the side of the building where all my scrap stuff was, so that nobody could see it until the following weekend, when I was able to paint it blue. And the blue I was very happy with, because that came out beautiful. Anybody who knows about lacquer knows you spray the lacquer. Once you spray it, you let it dry, and it dried fairly quickly. And you would come in and you sand it very lightly, and you clean it off with a tack rag, and you spray it again. And the more coats you put on it, the more, the deeper the color was, and the more of a shine of a color it had. But that blue was a beautiful color blue. You'd look into that, and it was absolutely gorgeous. I wish I could actually find that car, but I'm sure it's long gone by now. McGee63 says, MG63 says, Jim, I am going to send you some pictures of my 67 Camaro, because my Camaro was candy apple red. Then you know what candy apple red is supposed to look like. It's not supposed to look like purple. But that's a beautiful, send that to me. I'd like to see that. And if it's okay with you, I'll put a picture up on one of my, actually, MG63, what's your picture? I can't tell. The thumbnail is so small, I can't make out what it is. But yeah, send it. I'll put it up on one of my videos when I actually post it. Lon says my Sunset Orange 2003 Element has gold in the paint. I recently had, you know, I think I did a video on that one, if I'm not mistaken. Lon, you can check this out. I think I had a video I did for an orange. either it was a 2003 or 2004 or something like that, Element that had a problem with the, I think I did struts on it. There was some suspension work that I had to do on it, but I owned the exact same one. This is the one that I actually bought from a customer. I had done a lot of engine work too. You remember me talking about using the wrong antifreeze inside of a vehicle? Well, this Honda Element that we're talking about here, that Element, the guy put the wrong antifreeze in, and it caused a corrosion problem that actually rotted through, where I wound up having to change the throttle body and a bunch of other components on there. But I wound up buying that car because there was actually a problem with the variable valve timing as well. This guy believed in changing his oil every 20,000 miles, whether he needed it or not. And it caused a problem with the solenoid for the variable valve timing. And I think I did a video on that one too, Lon, about that, the variable valve timing and the solenoid replacing it. It had to clean out the screen as well. All right, let's see what we got going on here. Okay. Okay, sweet rims. I love those, Craig. Even though they're probably still out there, but I think you're going to pay a lot more than they were back in those days. That was a lucky number, 13 shop talks. Maybe that's why it was cut short. Oh yeah, that's a lucky number, 13. I'm surprised you. Oh yeah, you know what? There's 14. You're right, Nat. Uh-oh. Don't be surprised if you hear my dogs going berserk, because I hear the garage door open and Mrs. Jimthecarguy is heading out. Okay, maybe that's the problem. Yep, definitely. I should have just skipped 13. It's like when you go on an elevator and you're going up in the elevator and you're going 10, 11, 12, 14. You kind of skip 13. Maybe that's the good idea. I'll skip it. Okay, I remember the first gas shortage was 73, 74 time frame. Second one was 78, 79. MG63, I know you're a Jersey City guy. I used to work on Thorn Street and Kennedy Boulevard for that first gas shortage, the one in 73, 74. What is that? Yeah, 70, 73, whatever it was. But anyhow, I did work in a gas station on Thorn Street and Kennedy Boulevard during that first shortage. And if you remember that first shortage, it was in the winter. That was a brutal winter because you froze your cookies off outside because you never got to come in. You were outside the entire time. At least the second gas shortage wasn't in the dead of winter. It was actually in the warmer time of the year. Okay, what else we got here? MG63. Oh my gosh, MG63. How do you remember this stuff? Green flag was a fill, yellow was up to 5. Yeah, you know what? I didn't remember that until you just mentioned it. That's right. Depending on the color of the flag is when you knew how much gas you could get. That's true. You're right about that. All right, give me 1 second. I just touched my page here, and it went crazy. I think I got a lot of other stuff going on. It didn't. Yeah, Chris. It did go by odd and even, but they actually changed it around. On odd days, the odd license plate gas. The even days, the even one. And then they did that thing where it had a half a tank or less fuel. That's right. People used to switch plates all the time, all the time. You know, I'll try to put this as delicately as I can without stepping on anybody's toes. Back in those days, the oil companies, it was against the law for me to take care of my customers and just exclude everybody else. It was against the law. You couldn't do that. Did I take care of my customers? Absolutely. My customers never sat online. If my customers were online, they would come up and they would talk to me. I'd send them to go get a cup of coffee or whatever, give me 20 minutes, half hour. They'd come back and their car was filled up. The thing that always stuck in my mind is that the gas shortages come and the gas shortages go. But my customers are my customers. And after the gas shortage is all done and everybody goes about going and buying their product wherever they're going to get it, my customers are still my customers. So I would never make my customers stay online. If they came to me, I would take care of my good customers. Not everybody, but my really, really regulars never had to sit online. They would come in, hang around in the shop, talk a little bit, and their car would be filled up and they would be out. Was it 100% legitimate? Probably not. Actually, definitely not. But, they were my regulars. They were loyal to me, and I had to be loyal to them as well. All right, let's see what we got. Odd even. Oh, Lon, do you know where that gas station was? At Lucas Oil? It was actually that was on 53rd and Kennedy. That was directly across the street from where I was. They were on the opposite side of the street. It was actually a Luke Oil. I think it's a Luke Oil right now, if I'm not mistaken. It was a BP for a long period of time. It was closed up when I first opened up the place, and then I think it was BP that came in, and BP renovated the gas station and opened it back up. For it was a BP for a while. It was a sorry, my dogs are barking back there. You can hear them. It must have been a chipmunk or something ran past now. Yeah, it was a Luke Oil for a long time as well. Now, Lon, I didn't know you knew where that was. I thought you were from out of the state. Were you ever in New Jersey, Lon? Or um, did you ever live in New Jersey, or you're from the Bayonne area, or anything like that? Those gas shortages were BS, ways for the oil companies to, yep. The sad part is that the just my opinion. The first oil crisis, I think that was created by the oil companies. I think the oil companies got a hold of all of these nations that were selling the product. They decided to take the oil, load everything onto the barges, and then not bring it into port, leave it out in the ocean and stuff. So I think the first shortage was caused by the oil companies, but I believe the second shortage was not caused by the oil companies. I think it was all those countries that actually send the product here. They probably realized that these companies made a ton of money by screwing the American people, and I think that they decided to do the exact same thing. All right, what do we got here? Yeah, the sad part is that we would always have to be the person that the customer was angry at, would be the guy who owned the gas station, and it wasn't our fault. We were dealing with a lot of other issues ourselves, trying to run a business and still stay open, so that there wasn't you weren't in violation of your contract and evicted. Um, so the oil companies were actually the bad party, not the retailer. Was there bad retailers? Of course there was, but the majority of us were not doing anything. I mean, nobody's going to believe this, of course, but I was in the baby. How you doing? My dog just came to say hello to me. She's right next to me here. She's looking at me, wondering who am I talking to right now. I forgot what I was saying. Oh, about the oil companies. They really don't really care about anything except their profits. So, okay, be a good girl. Go on inside. Okay. All right. Let's see. People would park at the gas station overnight all the time. They would park there, and the problem I would run into is they would park in my gas station. They would block up my gas pumps, and when my gas truck would come, they call me on the phone and say, "Get these cars out of here because we can't drop the product off because you're blocking up the route that the truck had to come in. And if it was blocked up by the truck, the gas went back and you didn't get it." So that was always a pain in the rear end. Luckily, when they called me, I could get there fairly quickly and get the cars with an S out of the place, because there wouldn't be one. There would be usually 4 or 5 cars right to the street lined up out there. And they would even actually be out in the street, double parked down the street, waiting to get in. Okay. Big oil got us. Yeah, it's the truth. They got us, and there's nothing we can do. Oh, sorry about that. I hear voices and I just realized my computer is on over there. Um, MG63 says, and the sign that last car on the gas line, yeah, that was always a problem. What we used to do is we used to go in, and this, everybody is, I mean, now you laugh at it, but at the time it wasn't funny. We would go out there and you would talk to the last guy online and you say, would you mind if I put a sign on your back of your car, last car online? And you put it on the last car, and all of a sudden you look down, and the line never gets any shorter. You go down there and look. What happened is somebody would pull up, take the sign off the guy in front, and put it on theirs. We used to have to go out there and put the sign on the back of the car, and last car, and send the man at the very end to follow a line up, so that everybody would not move the sign, because that would happen all the time. The guys would move the sign, last car, and then all of a sudden you look down and you got 40 other cars behind that as well. So it was interesting to say the least. He says the first gas shortage gave birth to the brilliant invention of the locking gas cap. That's true. That's when the locking gas cap first came out. And then the I can't tell you how many times people would put a locking gas cap on it, and they get in their car and try to start it, and it wouldn't start. And the gas tank was empty. And I get the car down to the shop, take a look underneath it, and somebody would actually have stabbed a hole in the gas tank to siphon the gas out through the hole in the bottom of the tank. So not only did they wind up having to lose the product that they had in the tank, they also wound up losing the gas tank. I can't tell you how many gas tanks I had to replace because they actually had a hole stuck up right through the bottom of it with an ice pick or a screwdriver. Which I might add, whoever the thief was had some big pair of coconuts, because I wouldn't want to stab a screwdriver through a gas tank and possibly get a spark that would ignite and wind up burning the guy to death underneath the bottom of it. Which brings me to another point. This just popped into my head. When I had the gas station years ago, we had to lock our gas tanks, not because anybody was going to suck the product out of the ground, because, let me just back up. Yes, because somebody would come and suck the product out, but that happened after the gas shortage. Before the gas shortage, we never locked up our gas tanks. You had the tank itself had a cap was about that big, was probably like a 6-inch, and they used to have a cap on the top of it, and there was no lock on that cap. We used to just put the product in, put the cap on, and that was it. Well, during the gas shortage, some brilliant guy decided he was going to steal the gasoline, and he came around with a truck that they used to pump waste oil out of the ground. And when he dropped the hose down into the gas tank and tried to pump the gas out of the storage tank underground, the truck and him exploded. He wound up, being killed, because you can't use a gear drive to pump gasoline out of a tank. So he got a spark, blew up, and it wound up burning the guy and everything else around it right to the ground. My dogs are here with me tonight. They both of them. One of them is sitting right next to me right here. The other one is sitting right over there. That's because Mrs. Jimthecarguy is not here right now. So Jimthecarguy is the next best thing, and they'll come and hang out with me right here. So they're right here now. All right. I know. This one here, if I don't pet her, she nudges me with her nose and wants me to pet her. So, she'll nudge me every now and then. So if you see that, you know what's going on. All right. Okay, I'm going to go back a little bit. The gas cap on. Okay, Jim, on the front of the cover of a book was the title Holy Bible by Exxon. That's true. I'm going to tell you about that. Exxon, everybody remember, well, maybe not, a lot of guys don't remember, but back in probably, I'm going to guess in the late 70s, early 80s, Exxon had a ship in Alaska, and it was called the Exxon Valdez. And the Valdez actually ruptured. They lost a lot of product out into the ocean, and a lot of the wildlife up there was killed. The fishing was destroyed. It was a real mess up there. Well, Exxon, they did whatever the minimum that they had to do to clean it up. And then what they did is they came to me and every other retailer, and they gave us brochures that they wanted us to hand out to the public, showing what a great job they did to clean up that oil spill. Did they ever clean it? They cleaned it, a good part of it. But from what I understand, you can go up there now and you can go to that area and you can dig down in the sand or turn over rocks and you're still going to find that oil underneath those rocks or underneath the sand when you go into it. Oil, as you know, especially when it's cold, it turns to like a tar. It's really very, very thick. So to this day, I'm sure that they're still dealing with a lot of problems up there from that Exxon Valdez when it ran aground and then it wound up rupturing the tank. All right, I'm going to skip a little bit forward because I got a bunch of stuff going on here. I don't want to miss everybody, but I'm going to do that. Okay. All right, I have a couple things that, you know what, I didn't do a mail call this week, and I'm not going to because I didn't really have anything. I have one piece that I got, so we're going to put it off until we have a couple of other things, and then we'll take a look through that. But I do have a couple of questions, and these are going back from the other day, or last week, I should say, and this is what they write. Hey, check it out. Hey, I like my Jimthecarguy pen. Okay, this is John says, great post. Great post for those that need the confidence to get hands on. I do have a question about the rotor size. What are the rotor size? No, why are the rotor sizes different, and how can you know, other than measuring the rotors with the pads, with what pads you need? Is it a submodel? There's a bunch of other stuff it says too, but I just want to talk about this. A lot of times, a lot of people will say to me, what number brake pads or what number rotors? Every manufacturer has different size rotors and different size brake pads. One thing you always want to do is you want to take those, when you get a new rotor, before you put it on the car and assume that it's the correct one and throw the other one away, you want to put that rotor down on the ground, take your old rotor, put it on top, and make sure of a couple of things. Make sure that the diameter is exactly the same. It can't even be a 16th of an inch off. It has to be exactly the same. Wait a second, let me just see this. Okay, we're going to talk about this as well because somebody else had asked me this question. It just popped into my head right now. You have to make sure that's exactly the same size. Not even a 16th of an inch can it be bigger on the one side, because remember, if it's a 16th of an inch difference or an eighth of an inch difference or whatever the difference is, when that rotor turns around and it goes through the mounting bracket fits over the top of the rotor like this. Obviously, it's this way, but I'm just showing you for demonstration purposes. The rotor fits in here like this. If you have the rotor that's actually a 16th of an inch too big, it's pushed up too far and it's going to hit into the mounting bracket. It may not hit the mounting bracket, but it will absolutely wind up hitting and touching into the hardware on there. Because especially on Hyundais, this is very common. The hardware is very close to the rotor, so if you don't push the hardware in, or if you don't have the right size rotor, it's going to start making noise. So you want to make sure that. You want to make sure it's the exact same diameter, and then you want to take it, stand it on the hub facing down, the rotor itself facing up. Take your new rotor, turn it over, stand it side by side, and they should both be exactly the same height. One should not be higher or lower than the other. They need to be exactly the same height. If it's not exactly the same height, then that's going to create a problem. It's going to wind up, when it fits into the mounting bracket, instead of being exactly centered in the mounting bracket, if it's a little bit bigger, it'll stick out a little bit too far and it may hit into one side of the mounting bracket or the other. So you want to always make sure that's exactly the same height. And the third thing you want to check is in the back of the rotor itself, there's a little bit of a lip on there. You want to make sure that that lip matches the lip from the one that you previously took off. It's like a dust lip in there. It keeps the dust and stuff from going inside to the parking brakes. You want to make sure that that lip is the same length as the other. I've already seen it already where everything looks the same. You go to put it on, you turn it, and you'll hear like a whooshing noise as the rotor is touching against the backing plate. But you just have to make sure you look at it, and it's got to be exactly the same. If it's not exactly the same, don't even take a chance on putting it on, because you're definitely going to have an issue. I had one customer one time that wound up coming to me and asking me about a problem he had. He put the brakes on there and his wheel wouldn't turn. As it turns out, it was the wrong rotor. The reason it wouldn't turn is because when he put it all back together, he put the rotor on, he put the mounting bracket on, he put the caliper on, and then he tightened up the rotor, the rim onto the rotor and the studs. And when he tightened it up, it pulled the rotor in tighter and locked it up so that it wouldn't rotate. So make sure that that rotor is exactly the same size, not a quarter inch off, not a 16th of an inch off. It's got to be exactly the same. Okay, we talked about the 67. We talked about the 73. We did not talk about my motorcycles, so we will come back to that in just a minute, because somebody asked me what kind of motorcycles I had. So I will tell you what kind of motorcycles I had. I will tell you this: I started out on a very small bike, and I ended off. I had from a 125 to a 900, and I got rid of the 900 because I didn't like it any longer. And I went down to one that was smaller. The last bike I ever had was a 550. It was a Yamaha. It was the Seika. That was the last bike I drove, and at that point, I got into a little bit of a mishap with the bumper of a car. So, that's when I stopped riding. And that was actually, it was when I had my gas station, because it was a long time ago. But that's when I decided that driving a bike in the city was not a good idea. All right, here we go. Some other questions. Hope everything is well. I have some questions and you may answer them at a convenient time. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. On tightening a 5-lug nut on some vehicles, I've seen on YouTube, some say that you have to partially tighten before. Okay, I get the gist of what he's saying. It's a little bit jumbled up, but yes, okay. I've seen this before. A lot of times what they're saying is that when you have a 5-bolt, 5 nuts that you have to tighten up, you don't shoot in one bolt or tighten up one bolt. When you tighten up one bolt, the problem you run into is that where the center of the rim fits onto the hub itself, it's very tight. The hub itself may be a 3-inch hub or a 2-inch hub that the rim has got to fit over the top of. The problem is when it goes on there, if you tighten down one side and it goes on slightly cocked, and I've seen this happen because it happened in my shop. One of my guys tightened up a tire and it wasn't tightened up correctly, because when he tightened it, the rim went on cocked. And when it was on cocked, he tightened up the rest of them and they felt like they were tight, but they weren't, because the rim itself had twisted slightly. And instead of going all the way back up against the rotor and the hub where it's supposed to, it was twisted. So it appeared to be tight. I took the car for a test drive and I realized right away what was going on, because the back of the car was all over the place when you drive it. So to answer your question, the best way that I always do it, always tell my guys to do it, is you'll always see me shooting it on with an air gun. I don't ever do them by hand, because it takes too long. I'll shoot the one lug nut in almost all the way, not tight. I'll shoot it in until it touches the rim and it pulls the rim in a little bit, and then I'll go to the left side and I'll tighten a 5-bolt pattern. So you think about the 5 bolts, and I would start at the 3 o'clock position, shoot that one in almost all the way till it's snug with the rim itself, and then come over to the other side, like at 11 o'clock position. I'd shoot that until it almost touches. Then I would shoot down to the bottom, say around the 7 o'clock position, and tighten that one in, and then cross over and do so basically what you're doing is you're tightening this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. And then you go back over the whole thing again, just to make sure that everything is tight. But I've seen it before where it has cocked the rim, and you try to drive it in the back of the car or a truck or whatever is wobbling all over the place. Now, if by chance you somehow get the vehicle out and they drive the car, what's going to happen is that rim, it's going to wobble back and forth. At some point, that rim is going to move back and forth, and it's going to pop back in where it's supposed to be. It's just natural, because everything is moving around and rocking, so it'll stop and pop back in. If those nuts are not tight enough, then of course you run the possibility of losing the rim. and the tire, and you're going to have a real big problem at that point. But you're also going to wind up destroying those lug nuts on there. So always make sure you do it in that cross type pattern, and you're not going to have any problem. Like I said, I've been doing this for 42 years for myself, and I work for other guys for probably 3 years. So altogether 45 years. I have never, ever left a wheel loose that came off of a vehicle at all. There's never an excuse for that. You always need to always be very careful and think about what you're doing, just so you don't have that issue. All right, so we're going to cancel that out. Okay, this one here says, this is the same fella actually. My 2015, my minivan, a 2015 Caravan, I felt some pulsing on the brake when I am downhill braking. Then I retightened the wheels with a torque wrench. The vibration has lessened, but when I am at low speed approaching a stop, 20 kilometers per hour, then I step on the brake so light, and I can feel the brake on and off gripping. Okay, let me just read through this. What do you think is causing it? If you're getting that feeling, tightening it on with a torque wrench, absolutely, it's the best way to do it. To tighten it on with a torque wrench. That way, everything is going to be torqued in exactly right. A lot of people don't use a torque wrench. A lot of people, what they do, including the shops like myself, usually you don't get in there with a torque wrench. You actually get those the different extensions that the big tool companies sell you. They're torque extensions, and you can torque them on, and you're not going to have a problem with that. This particular case, even though it's torqued on with a torque wrench and it gets a little bit better, the damage has already been done. The rotor itself is probably warped, and no matter what you do, short of replacing that rotor, you're going to wind up with that pulsating. Now, we'll talk about this as well. I just got an email during the week, which I didn't even respond back to, actually. I just read through it. The subscriber said to me, if the rotors were still good, why did you not recommend resurfacing the rotor and you replaced it? The problem is today, if you get some rotors, yes, you can clean them up very lightly. You can run it off on a brake lathe and you can clean it up. The problem is that if a rotor is pulsating and you're getting that pulsating feeling, if you have to put it onto a brake lathe and machine that, you're going to wind up machining that rotor down below the minimum cutting specs. Once you get down to the lower end of the minimum thickness for the rotor, once you get down to the minimum thickness and you can machine it and you're still within specs, the problem is that rotor, when you put it on the vehicle, it's going to warp that much quicker because, as you know, rotors today are probably less than a half inch in thickness. If you machine out 60, 70, 80 thousandths of an inch, you're going to wind up machining it down to the minimum thickness, which means you have less material on there, which means it's going to get hotter and it's going to warp quicker. So that's why a lot of times, if the money is not real tight for a customer, they usually just tell them to replace the rotors because it's actually, in the long run, it's less expensive doing the replacement of the rotors. Okay. Oh, that was actually Gary. That was a response to Gary's question. I do have a couple more things we're going to talk about right here, but I want to see what's going on over here. I see a lot of talking going on over here that I'm missing out on. Joe says, Joe, do you have hats for sale? I don't know. I don't think Joe has hats. Thanks to all your support, Joe. Yeah, check out Joe. You'll see. I don't, Joe. I actually need to get some here. Okay. Gerald, you're here every week. You know what? You want a Jim the Car Guy T-shirt? If you do, send me your email or a personal message. You know what? YouTube might be doing away with personal messages very soon. But Gerald, send me your email or your mailing address. And I think I have a couple of shirts left. I don't think I have large. I think I have mediums and smalls left. So if that'll work for you, Gerald, let me know. And I'm going to send you out a shirt because I see you here every week. And I think so far you've been first online for probably 3 or 4 weeks. So, Gerald, send me a personal message, and I will send you a T-shirt. Oh yeah, I guess Joe told you the one about the guy putting the brake pads on backwards, huh, Gerald? Okay, I'm gonna scroll down a little because I got a lot of stuff going on here, so we're gonna go a little bit further. Bill, hi, how you doing? I think you know what? Hang on 1 second. Okay, Bill Strieber. Bill, I do want to apologize. I know you're probably watching right now, but I do want to apologize. I didn't send out that scan tool. I talked about that when I first started the show. I talked about that, but I mailed it out yesterday. I wasn't sure if it was the Bluetooth or if it was the Wi-Fi code reader. So I sent you both of them. So you should be getting it probably Monday or Tuesday. I think you were in New York, if I'm not mistaken. So you should get it pretty soon. When you get it, let me know what you think of it. And, hopefully they work for you okay. I got that. MG63. Okay. Okay. I'm going to put that on the side for you. A medium it is. MG63. Send me a personal message. I'm going to give you a call from my cell phone if you could. We need to talk. Okay. And then I want to talk to you. So send me your phone number, and I'm going to give you a call from my cell phone. I was sending an email. Okay, Gerald, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Ed Burns says, real men wear extra large. Let me guess, Ed, you're an extra large, right? Actually, but truthfully, Ed, you're right about that. Most of the time, the extra large and extra large go quick. You know what? The summer's coming, right? I don't know. Maybe we'll talk about that too. Maybe I'll order some more T-shirts and give some T-shirts away. I think I only have 3 or 4 of them left there, so I'll see. Well, let me know if anybody is interested in them, and maybe I will get some more shirts made up. But let me know what you think. I gave up. I had them for a long time. I probably had I don't know, a couple of hundred of them, and I went through them pretty quickly. But let me know what you think. If it's something everybody be interested in, I can order some more shirts and get them out to you as well. What do I got going on here? Robert West, love your channel, Jim. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Robert. Thank you. Just hit 50 some odd thousand subscribers. Not going as quick as I thought it was going to, but I'm very happy to be helping everybody. And I'm very happy to be helping everybody. And I get to meet a lot of nice people on this chat here. And a lot of these guys in here, they're all my friends now. They're from all over the country. Some are in Bayonne, but some are from all over the country, and you're not going to find a bunch of nicer guys than you're going to find right here. Gerald, my email is jimthecarguy1@gmail.com. So it's jimthecarguy1@gmail.com. Oh, Joe, you need a shirt? Oh, I didn't give you any yet, Joe. You know what? I gotta take a look, and I gotta see how many I got left. I think I only have one medium, and I think I got a couple of smalls. So I'll take a look, and I'll see what I got. We'll talk about that next week. But I did promise Gerald that I'm going to send him one. So if I have one medium and MG63, don't be angry at me. But if I have one medium, I got to send it to Gerald, because I did promise him first. If Gerald takes a medium, that is. Gerald, what size shirt do you wear? Medium? I got medium and small. I think that's all I got left. Joe says no. What do you mean, Joe? You don't want to wear my shirt, Joe? I was actually, you know what? MG63. I was just in Jersey City today. You know what? Oh, I don't have it with me. You know, yeah, you know what? We're going to talk about this. And it's only because MG63 said this. I was in Jersey City today. Has anybody gone down to Liberty State Park lately? I went down there. I like going on the days when it's not so nice out. I'll go down there because, like I said, I got my two dogs with me, and walking around down there with two dogs sometimes can be a little bit challenging. But it's very interesting going down there and actually walking. Like today was raining, so it really wasn't that crowded down there. But it was very nice going down there and actually walking around. And MG63, you probably know this, but did you know that down at Liberty Park back in 1910 or something like that, that used to be a munitions factory down there? And Joe, you from Joe's Auto Electric, I don't think you know this either, but there used to be a munitions factory down in the Liberty State Park area. And at that time, it was not Liberty Park. Obviously, it was an island out there, believe it or not. It was out on an island, and they used to have a munitions factory out there. And what happened is during World War One, somebody actually sabotaged the place and blew it up. The explosion from Jersey City was heard all the way up in Connecticut. The explosion was so loud. And what happened is from the explosion, the shrapnel actually went, obviously, it went wherever it wanted to, but it actually wound up going through the torch. They said it actually, and I'm going to quote this, I think it said that the shrapnel penetrated the torch of Lady Liberty. So it went from Jersey City, that explosion, the shrapnel went right straight across and wound up damaging the statue itself. But it's interesting stuff down there. And it's been a while since I've been down there, but it was actually pretty neat going down there and checking it out down there. You know what, Ed Burns? Geez, you're right. It was called, you're right. It was called, you're right. It was called, and I'm not being a smart guy or anything like that, it was called Black Tom Island. That's what it was called. You're right. Eddie, you must be from Jersey. Now, Eddie, you must be from Jersey then as well. Actually, you must be as old as dirt then, because if you remember that. But you're right. It was called Black Tom's Island, I think it was, right? Black Tom Pier explosion. Yeah, you're right. MG63. You remember were you a little kid at that time when that happened? I don't think so. All right, let's see. Jim, have you worked on many Ramblers back in the day? Yeah. Gerald, you're a medium. Okay. Okay, Gerald. All right. Now, all right, so Gerald gets the medium. MG63, you're going to send me your phone number in a private message when you have a chance. Or better yet, just email it to me. It's jimthecarguy1@gmail.com. And I want to give you a call so we can talk, actually. All right, let's see what we got going on out here. I lived on your childhood block. Serious? Ed Burns. Is that really your name, Ed? Lived on my childhood block. You grew up in my neighborhood? Is that your real name, Ed? Ed Burns? Lived on your childhood block. Wow, now I'm very curious. Let me see. Statue of Liberty was a... Leave it to MG63 to come up with that one, right? Yeah, but I was really surprised to learn that. Oh, now Ed, you got my curiosity going. I live on your childhood block. Yeah, now I'm very curious who you are. That's a long time ago. Okay, Joel says, I just got a 65 Rambler Marlin. Remember them? Wow, very nice. Is the car in good shape? Okay, yeah, Eddie, send me now I'm curious who you are. Um, Someplace on my channel, there is my email. I think it's on when you go to About and you click on About, you can find my email on there. But Ed, my email is jimthecarguy1@gmail.com. Well, now I'm curious. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna go check my other computer. I'm just gonna wait. I'm curious. Childhood block. I wonder who you are. That's what I'm wondering. I'm actually gonna I'm gonna give me 1 second. I'm just going to my other computer, going to my emails. I'm watching for you, Eddie. Give me 1 second, yeah. Give me 1 second. And I got a couple of car questions for you guys too. I know we didn't do them last week, but I got a couple of car questions for you. Okay. All right. My computer's on my email. All right, Eddie, I'm watching for an email from you. I'm curious who you are. If you're from my neighborhood, then you may remember me from the motorcycle days as well then too, right? Because back then where I grew up, I used to have I lived not far from an intersection, and on all the kids in the neighborhood, when I got on my motorcycle, they'd hear my bike start up, and everybody would come running out, and I would drive whoever it was they would get on my bike, and I would drive them to the corner, and they have to get off the bike on the corner. So I drove them like maybe 300 feet, and they would have to hop off. I wonder if you were from my neighborhood and remember when I used to do that for a lot of the kids in the area. Okay, what do we got going on here? I'll send you an email. Lon, I love it. It's a great car. Very nice. I hope it's in good shape. Hello, Jim. How much do I spend on? This is one of my subscribers says, "Hello, Jim. How much do I spend to change brake pads in your country?" Well, it's all going to depend on what kind of car it is, but a good rule of thumb is you're probably looking at about an hour and a half in labor. So it's going to depend on whatever the labor rate is in the area. A normal brake job in my shop is anywhere from like $200 to $300, like that, parts and labor. And like I said, it just depends on what kind of car it is. Wyatt says, "Hey, Jim, I have to go. The wife wants some quality time." Wyatt, that's the most important thing. When they say happy wife, happy life. Remember that. I don't have to tell you. You know that already, though. 25,000 black and red small block V8. Very nice. Very nice. 25,000 miles. I wonder if it was garage kept or was it out in the street? You know? If it was garage kept, that's pretty good. I'm going to tell you a story now. Somebody I know came to me one time and he says to me, "I have the opportunity." Remember, we had one of the questions we had years ago was, I got an email from Gerald. Gerald, thank you very much. I got one from Marco, 67 Camaro. I got that too. I'm still waiting for Eddie to send me an email. I want to know who you are. But I remember one guy came to me one time and he said wanted to buy a Grand Prix from a little old lady that had this Grand Prix. I believe it was a 400 cubic. Oh, you know what? Absolutely was a 400 cubic inch engine. And what happened is he came to me and he said to me, "I want to buy this car. It's whatever it was, a 70 or 71, whatever it was. I don't recall the year. No, actually, you know what? It was a 69 Grand Prix." And he says to me, "I want to buy this car. It's got 28,000 miles on it. The car runs good." Little old lady had the car and always drove around town, never went anywhere with the car except around town. And it's a good deal, the money and all that kind of stuff. What the price was, I don't recall. But what happened is I said to the guy, "If you're going to buy the car, don't drive the car on the highway. Use it around the city." Because as you know, back in the older cars, or maybe you don't know, but the older cars, they wear inside the cylinder wall, the pistons travel up and down. There's rings on the pistons. You have your compression rings, two compression rings, and you have an oil ring on the bottom of it. And what happens is that compression ring is set down just a little bit. So the piston comes up and it goes to a certain height and it stops and comes back down. But that's driving around the city at 20, 25 miles an hour, typical little old lady car. Well, this guy buys the car and he takes the car out and he's using the car as his everyday driving car. And after about, I think it was 32,000 miles, he comes into me and the car is running like horrible. There's oil spitting out the dipstick tube, and out you take the cap off the thing and the oil comes spitting out through the cap. So basically what was happening is the engine had blow-by. And what blow-by is that the compression is actually going down into the crankcase and pushing the oil up out the dipstick tube or wherever it's coming out of. Well, at that point, the engine is shot. I did a compression test on it to find out that one or two cylinders had zero compression. When I pulled the engine apart to take a look at it, I pulled the engine apart, took it out, popped the pistons out. Not only did the rings break, but what happened is the rings broke, but the compression rings. The compression ring broke, and you looked at the piston, and where the ring of the piston, where the compression ring goes in the piston, snapped off the pistons itself. So even though it had very low mileage on it and it was used in the city, he took it on the highway, and by heating it up and actually beating up on the car, he wound up blowing up the engine. And at 32,000 miles, wound up having to replace I did a rebuild of the engine because he had destroyed the pistons at that point. So that's good. Back in the good old days. Let me go back here. 25,000. See you, Wyatt. John says, Jim, well, what do you know about issues with direct injection with carbon buildup? Well, John, we'll have to talk about that. There's a little bit more involved with that. I want to warn you, my dogs are going to go berserk because I hear my garage door opening up. So be prepared. I knew it. Okay, I knew it. Okay, Gerald, I see you got your email here, but that's it. She's a little old lady from Pasadena. You remember that, huh? John, Joe can help you. He'll give you any information you need to know about that, so you can just, talk to Joe. He's a very good friend of mine, and he won't steer you wrong. He'll take good care of you. The Beach Boys stole the idea from Jim. That's right. I wish I had half the money those guys had, right? Okay, here we go. Beach Boys. Mine was an old lady. Joel says mine was no old lady, but was an old man. Not very much older than me. Okay, well, just, the only thing you want to keep in mind, Joel, is you don't want to take it out on the highway and really start beating up on it, because these cars get broken into traveling at a very lower RPMs. So just be very careful, be very mindful for it, and you shouldn't have a problem with it. If you're going to take it on the highway and bring it out to highway speed, then yeah, you might have an issue with it, but just drive it very safe. Sorry, I got distracted. I was just reading another one here. No way, there was Jan and Dean. Jan and Dean, you're right. Release the hounds. Okay. Ed Burns. Absolutely. Wow, pretty cool, Eddie. That's very interesting stuff. Thank you. I appreciate you sending that to me. But yeah, I did go to that school you said the first time. I went there for actually kindergarten, and then I went to that other school for the rest of the time. Oh, glad. Thank you for sending that to me. I appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, what else we got going on here? Okay, I got a couple more things we're going to talk about here, and then we have a car question. You know what? Maybe yeah, we're going to do this. Okay. Um, Shaking Two Trees says, good video, just curious whether you fill the oil filter with oil to prime it. As far as the drain plug gasket goes, I got 13 years out of the OE drain plug on my Dodge Magnum. Yep. Most of the time, the drain plugs will last you pretty much a lifetime of a car. Um, I do get this question. Actually, I got this question probably again yesterday and the day before as well. I always hear from people, do you pre-fill an oil filter before you put it back up onto a car? And truthfully, no, I don't. And the reason I don't is most filters are never straight up anymore. Most of the filters today are sideways or upside down or in some way not where you can easily fill them. Did I used to do it years ago? Yes. Back in the day, back when I used to bath in a gas station, a lot of times the filters were pretty much straight up. And I wouldn't fill the filters, but I would put a little bit of oil in it and I would screw it back up. Today, though, I don't do that. I pretty much just take a filter out, clean off where the gasket goes, lubricate the new filter gasket, and put it back up. But it is a good question. And do I do it at the shop? No, I don't. I will say that probably 99.9% of the mechanics, professional mechanics out there today, do not pre-fill an oil filter before they put it on. It just doesn't happen. Now, a lot of times you'll see on YouTube these guys doing a video and they'll fill the oil filter up before they put it on. Could you do it yourself? Sure, you can. But do any professional mechanics do it? No, I doubt you'll find anybody out there who pre-fills an oil filter before they put it back up onto a car. And if you're using the correct weight oil and everything, as soon as you start it up, it's going to have instant oil pressure anyway. So it should not be an issue for you. I have two more things we're going to go through, and then we're going to get back to some of this stuff. And then I got a car question for you as well. This is Dodge Ram 4x4 says to me, okay, all right. He just says to me, I'm glad I live in Arizona. Zero rust. Good video. That's true. The biggest problem we have up here is rust. Whenever you have a car that's brand new, you don't have to worry about that issue. But as they get older, yeah, you do have to worry about a lot of rust on there. I will tell you this. You know what? That's another story for another day. Let me finish this up here, and I'm going to tell you the story anyway about rust. Okay. This one here says, I'm not even sure who this is. I didn't actually write down who it was that sent it to me. Would it be a major problem if I use 5W30 synthetic blend for a Ford Motorcraft for a Ford Motorcraft 2.0 EcoBoost engine? I will tell you this. I believe that the EcoBoost uses a very thin oil. I don't know without looking it up what year it is or anything like that. But what I will tell you too is that don't ever put in oil that's not recommended in your owner's manual. If it tells you in the owner's manual to use a 5W30, then by all means use a 530. Most cars today, they recommend one weight oil. They don't recommend, like years ago, cars used to run a 530 or a 1040 or whatever it was. Used to run seasonal oils, different oils back then. Today, they use the same oil year round. So whatever your owner's manual says is the oil that you want to use. Never listen to somebody who says, well, just because it calls for a 520, you can use a 1040 or whatever. You never want to use an oil that's not recommended by the manufacturer. All right, so that we're going to do. Let's talk about a couple more things over here, and then we're going to have a call question for you, and then we're going to call it a night. I'm going to go back here, 2,000 manual since new. Have the original drain plug and washer. That's right. If you do, take care of it and don't over tighten it. You're not gonna you're not gonna destroy it. What kind of dogs? Chris says, what kind of dogs do I have? I have two. One is a border collie, and the other is a lab. All right, never change the oil. That was good. Head burns. It never sleeps. I actually have this is Joe's auto says this. I actually have a great story about that subject. No rust. 71 Camaros still have it. Still have one at the shop. Oh, I know which one you're talking about, Joe. Okay. All right. I think we're gonna call it a night with the questions over here, but I do have a call question for you. All right. Is everybody ready for this one? This is going to be a call question. We didn't do it last week. I think we finished off the last question we did was remember we talked about actually, let me just go back and I'll tell you what that question was and what the answer was as well. Remember we talked about it last. It said, what was the fastest internal combustion American production car? Didn't give you a year or anything like that, but the answer was a 98 Dodge Viper. Again, it tested the motor to 192.6 miles per hour. Now, I will tell you this. I'm gonna tell you the story anyway. You talk about rust up here in the Northeast or anywhere up in this whole area up here. Going back years ago, I had a customer come in to me. He bought a Stealth. And he brings the Stealth into me. It was brand new. He just drove it out of the dealership. He brings it into me and he says to me, I want you to undercoat the whole bottom of the car for me. I don't want it to rust. So I said, the car has been undercoated already. I said, you sure you want to do it? He said, no, I want to undercoat it. So I get the car on lift. I undercoat the whole car. I get the whole thing done for him. Now, fast forward to probably just about 5 years ago, this same customer comes to me and says, listen, he says, you interested in, I always used to tease him all the time. When he used to come to my shop for any kind of work, I used to say to him, you taking good care of my car? Because when you're ready to sell this car, I'm going to buy it from you. So we're jokingly. So one day he calls me up and he says, listen, he says, you remember you said you wanted to buy my car? He says, if you're interested, he says, I want to sell it. I said, well, I haven't seen the car in probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. I said, where have you been? He said, well, he said, to be honest with you, he said, I don't drive the car anymore. It sits in my yard, in my backyard or side yard, and it just sits there. And I said, well, is the side yard dirt or is it blacktop? And he said, no, it's dirt and grass. So I said, well, I really don't want to buy it. I said, because rust is going to be an issue. All that moisture that evaporates up from the dirt or from the grass, all that moisture gets up underneath the car and it just rots out everything. I've seen cars already where I try to lift them on the lift and they fall apart because they're so badly rotted out. I junked a car one time with 8,000 miles on it for that reason, because it was so rusted that it was falling apart when I lifted up. I'd lift the car up and the nose would stay down and the whole car would start to flex. So rust is a real big issue. We're not going to talk about that car. We're going to get back to the Stealth. So I says to the guy, I appreciate the offer. I said, but I'm really not interested because it sat there. I'm sure it's going to be in really poor condition. And I hang up the phone. And I'm thinking, I'm working. I'm thinking, what? I remember doing something on that car. And then it dawns on me 15 or 20 years ago when I had that car in my shop. I remember that I undercoated that car. When I undercoat something, there's no corner left unsprayed. Everything is covered 100%. So I called the guy back up and I said, listen, I said, I am interested in the car. So I'm going to take a gamble. The car hasn't been started in 5 or 10 years or whatever. Maybe the engine's no good. I'm not really sure. I said, but I'll take a gamble. I'll buy the car. I get the car. I get it towed down to my shop. I lift the car up on the lift. And obviously the tires were no good. The tires were all dry rotted and flat. The car hadn't been driven or anything. But I lifted it up and put it up on the shop. And there was not one speck of rust underneath there. Because I undercoated the car so well, there wasn't anything that was rusted underneath there. The only thing I found underneath there was spider webs and spiders. That was it. So make a long story short, I did a little bit of work to it, cleaned it up, and I wound up, flipping the car to to somebody else who was really looking for that car. It was a Dodge Stealth. It was the biggest engine they made. It was a 5-speed trans, all-wheel twin turbo. I think it was a 3.0, if I'm not mistaken, twin turbo. Very, very fast car. And it was all-wheel steering too, from what I recall. It was actually a really good car. So I wound up flipping that, and somebody up in Maine actually bought the car from me and drove the car back, and absolutely loved the car. You know what? Maybe that's a subject we're going to talk about next week. Maybe we'll talk about anybody who wants to buy and fix and flip cars. What we used to do years ago. I'm going to talk about. Let me just write this down so I don't forget. Okay, we're going to talk about this next week. We're not going to talk about it now because it's been pretty late already. Next week, we're going to talk about car auctions, buying cars, fixing cars, and flipping cars for a profit. Can you make money at it? Sure you can. I did it for a lot of years. We'll talk about that next week because it is a pretty lengthy discussion we're going to have. I used to do a lot of buying, fixing, and selling cars. And then to this day, I still do it. So we're going to talk about buying, fixing, flipping cars, car auctions, and all the scams that go on during the car auctions. I've been to many auctions, and you would be amazed as to what goes on at these auctions. But we'll talk about that next week when we have a little more time, and we'll discuss in detail car auctions and all the stuff that's gone on with the auctions. Now, back to my question. This is the question I'm going to watch here. I'm going to give a couple of minutes, and we're going to see who gets this, and hopefully none of you guys go. Thank Lon, good to see you there. Hopefully none of you guys are going to Google this. You're going to try to think about this yourself. All right. What automaker's first logo incorporated the Star of David? All right. What automaker's first logo incorporated the Star of David? All right. So what do you think? Don't Google it. All right, let's see. What automaker's first logo incorporated the Star of David? It's pretty good, actually. I didn't know that myself. Disgruntled mechanic. Lon says a Subaru. Nope, disgruntled mechanic. You got it. The Dodge. It's the Dodge. You're right, Mike. Good guess. I know that you probably knew that one right off the top of your head. MG63 says Chrysler. Joe says Mercedes-Benz. Eldine Morello says Dodge, and that's right, it was actually the Dodge brothers. And when you look at the insignia, it says on there, around the top of it now, it says Dodge Brothers. It's got the Star of David in the center, and it says Detroit, USA. So that was it. All right. I think that's pretty much going to be it. I got one more. You know what? Let's do one more. Okay. This is one more I got for you. What else we got going on here? Dad's car had it on the front of. Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, definitely, yeah. That's right. You never forget once you've had the car in your family or whatever. That's true. I remember my dad had he had a lot of Dodges and Chryslers, and that's I remember he had one that was a Chrysler. I don't even remember what it was, but I remember it was like a yellowish colored Dodge. It had the big wings on the back of it. Of course, it was a 4-door family car. I know it was a Dodge. I just don't recall what it was. But then my father actually had a station wagon, and it was actually that car was quick. It was a Chrysler, and it wasn't the Imperial. It slips my mind what it was, but it was a Chrysler. It had a 440 4-barrel carburetor, and it was a 383. 375 horsepower out the door at the factory. That's how quick those cars were back then. But you're right, Dodge, Chrysler, they were great cars. 74 Dodge. Dodge had the Dodge and Chrysler. Okay, this is the next question I got for you. Who wrote to Henry Ford, I have I have drove, this is exactly what it says, I have drove Fords exclusively when I could get away with one. It has got every other, and this is exactly how it says, it has got every other car skinned, and even in my business hasn't been strictly legal. It doesn't hurt anymore to tell what a fine car you got in the V8. That's what it says. So who wrote that? I'm going to read it to you one more time. Who wrote to Henry Ford, I have drove Fords exclusively when I could get away with one. It has got me every other car skinned, and even if my business hasn't been strictly legal, it doesn't hurt anything to tell you what a fine car you got in the V8s. And then there's a question mark. So we'll see what you think about that one. I was kind of surprised about this myself. What do we got? Bob T, Clyde Barrow. You're right. It was. You're right. It was Clyde. But I think you guys have been on the computer. All right, Clyde, John Dillinger, all these guys, Al Capone, yeah. Actually, you know what? The car that a friend of mine is selling is one you would associate. I'm going to find out what kind of car it is, and I'm going to tell you about it next week. But this car looks like a car that Al Capone would have driven. You remember they used to show the old movies years ago where the gangsters would be standing on the running boards, riding down the street, and machine gunning everybody. That's what kind of car my buddy has up here for sale. So I'll find out about it, and I'll let you know. I'll let you know what kind of car it is. Okay. Oh, okay. You really knew that yourself. Very good, Bob T. Nope, no cheating here, Jim. Very good. That's pretty good. Okay, we have a couple of more. I don't think we have many left before we actually run out of questions. No, we got a couple. Actually, no, we got quite a few more. Wow, we got some neat stuff coming up. You know what? How about we do one more? Yeah, we're going to do one more. All right, you ready for this one? Okay, this one says, these glasses are getting blurry, or I think I might need better glasses because either that or my computer's blurry. I think my computer's probably blurry. That's probably what it is. Okay, here we go. This one here. This is the last one, and then we're going to call it night because it's probably 8:45. It's almost my bedtime. What car was the first production V12 as well as the first production car with aluminum pistons? So what was the first production V12 as well as the first production car with aluminum pistons? Aluminum pistons, remember that. That's the key. All right, let's see what we got here. Wow. Oh, I like this one. This one is pretty cool. Wait till you find out what this is. Okay, we're going to go back over here. What do we got? Cadillac. Nope, not a Cadillac, not a Chrysler. Not a Caddy, not a Jaguar, not a Duesenberg, not a Tucker, not a Jag, not a Packard. Wait a minute. Bob T. You're right, it was a Packard. It was a Mercedes-Benz. Good guess. MG63 foiled again. Okay, this is what it says. Okay, Bob T, you're a pretty smart guy. Okay, this one here says this is the key. It was a V12, but it was aluminum pistons. Remember, it says the 1915 Packard Twin 6 used during World War I in Italy. These motors inspired Enzo Ferrari to adopt the V12 himself in 1948. So that was the inspiration for the V12 Ferrari. We got some pretty good stuff going on here. I'm going to stop. These are very interesting. I like this stuff. Okay, we're done there. That's it. We're going to get back to these questions next week. All right, I think we're going to call it a night. Um, so I got my emails from a couple of guys regarding T-shirts. I got to find out about a friend of mine that knew me from where I grew up, which was pretty interesting as well. And I guess that's it. All right. I think we're going to call it a night here. Thank you for everybody stopping by. I appreciate it and all your contributions and all your chat that we've actually done here. But I'm a little bit. I got to get a beer or something because I'm a little bit parched from talking for 2 hours, but or an hour and 45 minutes, I should say. All right, but let me see. What else did I want to say? Something else I had here. Yeah, that's not it. That's not it. That's not it. Okay. All right. Okay. I'm lost without my computers. It's hard to believe that you know when I was a kid in school and didn't take up typing, how much I would be typing nowadays. With the computers. Not one computer, not two computers, but two computers, an iPad, and everything else that you do today. All right. So we're going to call it nice. So again, everybody, thanks for stopping by. That's right, MG63, a beer. And one day. We're gonna talk. I know you're in Jersey City. One day I'm gonna stop up there and we're gonna have a beer someplace up there. We'll get to catch up a little bit. All right. As always, thanks for watching. I'm gonna see all you guys next time. And if you have any questions or you want to discuss a certain topic, next week we're going to talk about the auctions and the flipping of cars and stuff like that, which is going to take up a lot of time because it was something I was pretty heavy into. But anybody has any questions, they want to talk about anything, send me an email, and we'll talk about a certain subject next week or the week after, whatever. So you want to discuss something? Let's send it up there. We'll put it out there, and we'll talk about it, and we'll see what everybody else has to say with it. All right, but for Sunday night shop talk, we're going to call it a night now, and that's it. I think it's an hour and 45 minutes, and that's it. We're pretty much all done. All right, as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one. All right, thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you next week. As somebody would say, same time, same place. 7 o'clock Sunday night. I'll be here with my rabbit up there and my dog's over here on the floor, and we'll talk next week. All right, so enjoy your week, and I think it's supposed to be fairly nice. A little bit of rain tonight, but I think the rest of the week is supposed to be nice here in Jersey. All right, thanks for watching. See you guys on the next one.